Welcome on to the Tortillas Takes podcast. You are on once again with your boy, Albie Shore. And the energy that I brought in that intro is about the most energy we're probably going to have this entire episode, because we're going to give you, the audience, the same amount of energy that the Texas Tech Raiders gave on Saturday, which is nothing. Right? It was a pretty atrocious showing from the Red Raiders on Saturday against the rival Baylor Bears. So to talk about this no good, very bad, awful game, we got the Red Raider expert himself, Joe Lopez. What's going on, Joe?
Gentlemen. What wasn't great about Saturday? And great, I don't mean Great. I mean great, Grate, as in shredded like cheese is all we did on Saturday. It was terrible. Jeramey, I hope you enjoyed that pun this evening, but great. Yeah, it was bad. It was very, very bad. I was in the stands. I stayed and watched the entire thing all the way through, just, with that little silver lining of maybe this Tech team could figure it out. And boy, was I wrong. So we're here to talk about it.
That pun and Micah Hudson's one-handed catch is probably the best thing that happened over the course of the last few days. So that's amazing. And so also to talk about this game is the people's champ himself, Jeramey Gillen. What's up, Jeremy?
Unlike Joe, I pieced out there in the fourth because I had a date with some tacos. I went to Taqueria Atlan, and I spent about $40 on Mexican food that made me feel a little bit better. Yeah, and the game was still on, so I couldn't escape it. So I had to watch while I ate my tacos. But yeah,
that's the funny thing about this game. So Texas Tech does lose this game 59-35. I'm gonna bury the lead right from the beginning. And the funny thing about this game was that I also changed the channel. Right, Joe, you were at the game, so there wasn't no changing of the channel for you. But I also changed the channel.
I just played with my 3-year-old daughter in the stands.
There you go.
You had plenty of room at that point.
Yeah. The row in front of me and the row that I was in was pretty ghostly at that time, for sure.
Yikes.
So I changed the channel, and I changed the channel at the beginning of the fourth, maybe end of the third. I was just and obviously came back to watch later on for this, but I changed the channel, and I was like, all right, let me just watch another game or something else. Then every time like the ticker would show oh, Baylor scored again, or it reminded me of and then I go through other games, go back, and the tech this game is still on. God, please end it.
Couldn't escape it. Couldn't escape it.
Quick aside, Jeramey, I think you were the one that posted something about the greatest independent coffee shop in the country is in Lubbock.
That's right.
Free marketing. But where is this place?
It's called Monomyth. It's over on Broadway, right next to the Fuzzies there on Broadway. It's good, man. They do a good job.
You're a coffee guy, so that's saying a lot.
I'm a coffee guy.
Yeah, that's saying a lot. All right, so Baylor comes to Texas Tech. So one thing is, and I think we talked about in the preview pod, this game, which has always been a rivalry game, but I think that the weird part about the Baylor-Texas Tech rivalry is that we're rarely good at the same time. When Tech was good in the 2000s, Baylor was atrocious. In the 2010s, when Baylor was good, Tech wasn't so much, right? And one of the things about Aranda versus McGuire was this thought of, well, maybe Tech and Baylor will be good at the same time. But now, as Tech has had, year one we were 8-5 last year, 7-6. This year starting out 5-1. Baylor, who year one under Aranda in 2021 wins the Big 12 title and just has been mediocre ever since. It was looking again okay, well, now that Tech is getting better, Baylor's going to be pretty bad. Baylor comes in this game 2-4, 0-3 in conference, looking terrible. But right from the get-go, Baylor shows and kind of puts their front foot forward and says, hey, no, we're actually a pretty good team, right? And they land the first punch. They land the first blow after an abysmal punt to set Baylor up with good field position, and we'll get to the special teams game here in a little bit. But an abysmal punt, starting the game off, Sawyer Robertson, Lubbock kid from Coronado, leads them down. And when I say leads them down, really off the back of Bryson Washington. Right before the preview pod, we talked about how the running game was going to be big for both teams. We thought that was going to set up much better for Texas Tech in a running game, but Bryson Washington lands that first punch. and it's 7-0 right off the bat, Joe.
Yeah, right off the bat. It was like they were playing on a mission. They came out hot, and we didn't necessarily help them from the start, with that bad punt. And we'll get to the special teams here shortly. But yeah, they came out hot. Like they had something to prove, like they had something to play for. Coming off of a bye week, it was just everything that Baylor put out on the field was the brand. The toughest, the hardest working, and the most competitive team was wearing white on Saturday night. And it was bad to just come out and watch a team play so uninspired, down. Like there was like almost like there was no energy after kickoff from this football team. And Baylor set the tone early, and they ultimately did what they had to do. They were a first half team up until this game. They hadn't played a full complete game, and then they closed out for sure, and they made a statement on Saturday night for sure.
So I want that Bryson Washington play, and I saw it in real time, but I ignored it at the times. When I did the rewatch, I was like, I shouldn't have ignored it. It was very, very, very lazy defense. Right? Like it was really atrociously lazy defense. It was, I tweeted it out that's about as bad as the defensive plays you're going to see from a defense, in that nobody did what they were supposed to do. The commentators actually blamed Jared Rodriguez for that, not setting the edge, which was dumb. He wasn't in a position to set the edge. Not setting the edge was the DN there. Jacob Rodriguez he didn't read the play early enough. So by the time the play was done, it's too late. He's far back, right? The corner's blocked up. Braylon Lux is blocked easily, who he also had a not so great game, right? And then the safety, I got to see. I can't remember exactly who the safety was. I think it might have been Coleman, but the safety was the angle that he took. Not only did he take a bad angle, didn't run full flat. Like that's a play alone. I was thinking to myself in real time, like, man, that's a play that in the film session is going to be terrible for everybody involved. Right at the time, I still thought it was going to be a close game, but that play was just abysmal. And when I say that I ignored it at the time, when I'm watching the rewatch, that play should have told me we were going to lose the game. Like that play, how everybody played on that play alone should have told me we're in for a long day, because that was the first of many plays just like
that. And we'll talk about it, but the energy, I think Joe said it best. Early, it was slow going for both teams, right? We both, I think, punted to start, right? We both had, lackluster drives, ended in a punt. I thought, you know what, great. We're about to get it going. I did not peg this defense to look so lost, right? Because that's something that we talked about earlier this season. And I say this on this drive, but this literally applies to every single touchdown drive Baylor had. I did not expect this defense to look so lost, especially out of the bye with a full capacity. And I still have all the faith in DeRuyter. I am baffled. I'm just baffled as a DeRuyter fanboy at what happened, because I think that, we talked early on, the issue with the defense at full capacity was that the schemes were too complicated, and it was just asking too much of a defense that was, not cohesive enough and not experienced enough to play a multiple style defense. So he said it after that ACU game, hey, we're going to hunker down. And we did. And instead of giving up 52, we gave up 37 to Washington State. But Washington State had a tremendous quarterback. After that, the average drops down. If you take away that game, if you only look at conference, especially before the Baylor game, you're only giving up 28 points a game. Average is like 28, which for Texas Tech football, that's good enough, because every game we've scored more than 28 points. This game, after that first run, I was like, yeah, this game we did too.
This game we did.
Oh my God. We are cooked, chat. We are cooked.
Well,
that run sucked, man. It sucked.
Yeah. No, that run was terrible. Now, I will say a good bounce back in the next drive, right? Baron Morton was able to lead the team down. Well, I say Baron Morton with the help of Taj, obviously. Listen, Taj is, despite the fact of what this game was about, Taj Brooks, I'm very close to saying he's the greatest running back in Texas Tech history. Right? It's like he's like a game away from me.
He's working. He's working his way, man.
I get like stat wise, he'll likely get there by the end of the year, but like even just looking at him compared to some of the greats running back that we've had before, I'm like, I don't know how you can top what this guy can do, right? So they both, him and Barron, lead us down the field, and we connect with a nice pass, nice pitch and catch, really. And that was a great play, touchdown pass to Caleb Douglas, and that the O-line blocked. Right, the O-line blocked, let him up. He was able to survey the field, saw Caleb Douglas, and a great pass through, zipped it right by two hands. I mean, Barron ain't got touch. He got 0 to 100. Okay, and so because it's 0 to 100, he was able to zip it right in. I'm like, all right, cool, we got a game. But Jeramey, here's the thing. Here's the problem with this. After that, defense forces a 3 and out. We get the ball back. I'm like, all right, Tech, we're about to do it. But here's the issue. Special teams, right? Because special teams, a terrible third down call right there on a 3rd and 12, Barrymore, we have to punt the ball. Right from the punt. We've already had one bad punt. Then we have another punt that the commentators were talking about the punt. Burgess had a few bad punts in this game. This wasn't one. Right, but they were talking about it being a line drive punt. The punt was fine when you have the gunner right in front of the returner, and he just is like, Cam Dickey just stands there and is like, oh man, that's crazy. College football's nuts, ain't it?
What do I do now?
What do I do now? We didn't.
He called the fair catch, right? You called the.
Well, because in practice you just run and just stand there. Like you was supposed to fair catch that, dude. They in practice they fair catch it. Oh man, they can run. That's crazy. Sorry, coach. So sure enough, runs it back. It's stopped at the 1 yard line. Bryson Washington gets it right in. Also, another aside: these referees were awful. Goodness gracious, how do you even call that a touchdown to begin with? Okay.
That was pretty sad.
Commentators are trying all they can to be like, well, he hit the pylon with his back leg. Like, no, he did not. Okay. No, he did not. What are we talking about here? But yeah, sure enough, quick touchdown, just like that. And then on the kickoff, we muffed it. We can't get the ball. So Baylor should have scored right off of there, but of course it's not. It's a muff punt. It's not a fumble. And so Baylor's like, fine. All right, that's no big deal. We'll just kick this field goal real quick. And it goes from literally being 7-7 game on to 17-7 in like a matter of 10 seconds. It was incredible. Literally about a minute and a half. But it was incredible. It was and I didn't even know what to say at that point, Jeramey. It was just I was lost for words.
Special teams is something we've got. Special teams, you can get really comfortable with special teams. You don't think about it very often. You think, we're punting or we're receiving a punt, we're kicking off. Like it's just a functional piece of the game. Nothing really happens. Like nothing really happens. Whatever. Until it does, right? Until you miss an assignment. And boy howdy, one missed assignment, one gunner who decides not to gun for the ball in 73 yards. Like it's a complete meltdown in one swoop. And it went, boy howdy. And I tell you what, put that one up there too. I tell you what, with the WHAT or HWH, whatever. If you can't, special teams can honestly make or break momentum. And it broke. If this Texas Tech team had any energy, if they woke up a little bit, and I tweeted it, I was like, I need y'all to wake up kind of now. If they had waken up after that touchdown, this put them in a sleeper hole. Like this was like good night, because it was gone. Like there was no more momentum defensively, especially. Like the defense capitulated after that. They're like, well, this one is over. So the fact that you let up such a punt return, thank God it wasn't a touchdown, even though it was for a split moment. Okay, fine. That happens. No big deal. Following it up immediately with your job is to catch the ball and you muff it after it's like lightning struck twice.
Yeah.
Oh, it never happens. But just Texas Tech fans are like, wow, that feels weirdly 2010s.
Funny enough, since Leach, I feel like our special teams has actually been okay. Right, like nothing too terrible. I mean, obviously, you're going to have college football. You're going to have your years where a kicker stinks, or Actually, I take that. We did have on 2 separate occasions. We are like the only school I've ever seen have an onside return back for a touchdown multiple times. So there's that, right? But it hasn't really been so much to where it's all bad. Punts bad, kicks bad, returns bad. And this game, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? Joe, what the hell? And it was, and we talked about it in this back-to-back situation, but Burgess was struggling the entire game. Struggled. And Burgess has struggled in this year too, right? Like there's been other situations where sometimes he's good, sometimes they're like, this game was a ugh.
Yeah. It was bad.
Catching my drift.
It was bad. And that Dre, going back to the Dre McCray not being able to come up with that squib kick wasn't necessarily a squib kick. The wind was knocking the ball off the tee when the Baylor kicker was trying to kick it, and that's why he topped it and just squibbed it down the deal. And I mean, ultimately, we put the special in special teams and not in the good way this weekend, and it was terrible, man. It was bad. Like I was watching this from the stands, and I'm like, man, like. We kick the ball out of bounds. We kick the ball 12 yards. We run right by the guy who catches the ball. And then we can't even get on a squib kick. Like what else on this are we supposed to do with this? And it's just over the course of the time that Kenny Perry's been running our special teams room. This is an anomaly. This has to be because we haven't seen this kind across the board since he's been here running the special teams. And it just, for whatever intensive purposes it is, the last 2 big time games that we have in Lubbock, Texas against Baylor, one for the Mahomes jersey and his deal where Baylor came in and whipped our ass. And then now we're riding high 3-0 in conference, coming off of a bye, being healthy, potentially going to 4-0 in conference. Guess who's there again? And guess who knocks us right off of our high horse? The Baylor Bears. And it's just, man, I don't even know where to begin or end all of that stuff, but man, it was tough to watch.
Here's the thing.
Very,
I would like if they were good and we were good at the same time. I would love for the lore of the Butt Bowl to grow to like conference, like for that to be the conference implications come down to the Butt Bowl. That'd be awesome. I would love that. We cannot catch a break with this damn Baylor team. And it's not even like close. They're blowouts either way. It's like no chance. Sorry. And doing it twice at home. Oh my God. Like what are we doing? Like at least make it a fight. Make me feel like there's a chance. Please.
Since 2015, the home team has only won this game 3 times. So that's interesting. It happened once. Baylor won in Waco in 2021, Tech won in Lubbock in 2020, and then Baylor won in Waco in 2019. Those are the only 3 times in almost a decade. So that tells you something.
That game in 21, was that the snap game or something like that where
the butt snap? The butt
what was it? Something with a snap, and then we missed a field goal at the last minute. It was like a 61-yarder.
Yep, and that would have tied it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's just how this rivalry goes. It's rivalry's ass.
Right. It is ass. dead ass, right? You're dead ass serious.
So I will say there was a sliver of hope in this game, even after the nonsense that was special teams. And that Texas Tech with about 4 minutes to go, you have to have what's called a 4-minute drive. Everybody knows, or sorry, not with 4 minutes to go, with 6 minutes to go. You have to have a time killing drive. Everybody knows about the 2-minute drive. Everybody knows about the drill where you're like, I got 2 minutes, we got to score here. Everybody knows about that. With 6 minutes to go, you have to have plays set in place of let's not only score but slow the game down. This team had 10 plays, went 80 yards down the field. It was a really good drive, right? At one point, we did end up getting a sack, but from 2nd and 16, we had a great run from Taj Brooks. We had an even better pass from Martin Douglas to get us another first down. We had another pass on 2nd and 10 to get us down to the Baylor 35. We were killing it. The 2-minute warning comes up. Our very next play is a trick play with Jalen Conyers passing it to Caleb Douglas, which I mentioned in our group chat. I'm like, it was inevitable that a Wildcat formation from Jalen Conyers was going to end in a passing touchdown. It was going to happen, right? I wish it wasn't in this game personally, but it was going to happen. It was known it was going to happen, and I actually don't think it's going to be the only time where we'll see Jalen Conyers throwing the ball, right? The only problem I had with that play and that drive was you were on the 20 with 2 minutes to go. That play, and I get it, you just want to score, but going into halftime, 17-14 Baylor, the game is still on. But you give Baylor a minute and 54 seconds, and in that minute and 54 seconds, they were able to do a 2-minute drill, run it right down our throats, get that pass interference that was necessary, that was needed to keep going down. And just like that, Baylor scored with 4 seconds to go, and Joe, it felt like the game was over at 24-14. Like, I know it wasn't really over. I know we could have done something. Obviously, games are never over at halftime. But that play, we talk about the middle six all the time. That drive with 2 minutes and not going into halftime 17-14, it felt like we were down 10. It felt like we were down 30.
Yeah, it actually felt down like we were down 40. It just ultimately deflated. You get a little bit of momentum back. You're able to get down, do that 80-yard drive and score a touchdown there. And, you're wishing and hoping that you killed more clock. I think it was Kinsey who said in chats, like, we left them a little too much time there. It's like, hey, we need to eat some of this clock up. And, in Jeramey's words, boy, howdy, did they come down and shove it down our throats. The three-man defensive line front absolutely killed this defense in multiple facets. And I know we'll touch on the defense here in a little bit, but I mean, whenever you're giving Sawyer Robertson that kind of time in the pocket, and then those running lanes between those three defensive linemen who can't generate anything, I mean, what else do you think is going to happen? We're in a prevent defense the entire time. They're just picking us apart, 5, 10, 20 yards. And then boom, before you know it, 10 seconds to go. And then they're right down there scoring. And it's very unfortunate. That's not the way you wanted to end a half, considering the slither of momentum that you had just dissolved in the air. So tough to see.
Mind you, to start the second half, Tech forces a 3-and-out. We get a touchdown, right? A really good drive to start off. Taj Brooks ends the caps with a 31-yard run on a 4th and 1, which is huge. We're within 3, but if we don't let up that last touchdown, we have the lead. And I truly believe, and I get it, we got blown out in this game, but I truly believe in that scenario where instead of it being 24-21, the game is instead at that point would have been 21-17. We're talking about a completely different game. Like, that's just how momentum works in football. Because after that drive, let me tell you something, guys. We had Baylor touchdown, interception. Baylor touchdown, punt. Baylor touchdown, turnover on downs. Baylor touchdown. And just like that, it's 52-21 game. So I turned it off after the turnover on downs. It was like, all right, well, time to have some positive mental health here. It completely – that Baron Morton interception was deflating. One of those plays, I know a lot of people want to blame Kitley on that play. It's just a bad pass. It's a bad decision, bad pass. You can blame Kitley all you want, but that's just a bad pass. The turnover on downs there, that to me was Tech giving up on the game on a 4th and 7 on your own 25. I get it. We're down 45-21. Game's over at that point. You as a coaching staff are saying the game's over, right? With that turnover on downs. And, of course, Baylor makes you pay right away. We scored 2 more touchdowns at the end of the game to make it seem like the offense did something. But let's face it. Nope, all 3 phases were bad. All 3 phases were bad. Offense was bad. Special teams was atrocious. Defense was atrocious. And I really don't. I mean, I don't know if Joe or Jeramey will have anything else to say about the second half, but I don't think we need to go down the play-by-play any much longer.
Spicy.
Just the Micah Hudson catch.
Oh yeah, no, that is true. We did have that Micah Hudson catch, which we'll talk. Well, so actually, before we get to desecrating and everything else, it did bring up people discussing Micah Hudson. Joey McGuire in the press conference today, there was a question about potentially moving him on the inside, right? Because let's face it, I mean, the outside he ain't playing. He's not playing, right? And when I'm saying he's not playing, I'm not saying he doesn't. Like our guys are good. If there's two positions that on the team are very good, it's receiver and linebacker. You know, if Micah Hudson was a 5-star right tackle, I'd be like, nah, he needs to play. You know what I'm saying? If he was a 5-star, hell, if he was a 5-star wide edge, I'd be like, my God, please put him in immediately.
That's right.
I'm at this point I want to find a 17-year-old who's playing high school ball right now and seeing if we can get him some eligibility because we need some help. Right. But the fact is that he just plays a position that we're good. I talked about Caleb Douglas already 3 times in this game. He ain't playing X. He's not playing Y where Josh Kelly is. Right. I would argue that he don't even need to play. Actually, I think the Y is where Coy Eakin is. He doesn't even, he doesn't need to, like those 3 players are playing really well. One place where it could be potential, I could see him in the H, maybe. Right. So I think if you move him inside, the H is where it makes a little bit more sense. He's shifty, a smaller receiver. McCray's faster. Outside of McCray being faster, don't know what else he does better than Hudson. Right. So that I agree with. But as far as Hudson taking Eakins, which is they don't play the same position, but taking really Douglas's or Kelly's spot, he's just not as good as those 2 guys. And that's not egregious to say. That he and him at 18 is not better than what, a 22 and a 23-year-old? Like, that's not egregious to say that. He just right now isn't. And again, he still has a good attitude. Everything seems fine there. So I will say it on that front. Outside of that, and what everybody wants to talk about is how bad the team played. And when a team plays this bad in every level, right? Not a one player playing bad, not the whole team plays bad. Obviously, you go to talking about coaching. And one thing I've seen frequently is when the team plays bad, a certain guy gets blamed over anybody else. And that is Mr. Zach Kittley. So, Joe, does Zach Kittley deserve as much blame that he's getting? Should he get more? Or is it – I mean, I'm not going to say he absolves blame. I don't think anybody is absolvable blame. But, like, what are your take on, before we get to the other ones, Zach Kittley's, because I saw his name more than anybody else about how fire Kittley. Somebody tweeted at the account to get fired Kittley trending. Like, what's your take on that?
I think that's still, I mean, I don't really love his play calling all that much all the time, but I mean, sometimes he gets it right. And if you're looking, I guess, at the big picture, right, the 3 years that he's been here, I mean, what happened in the first 2 years? I mean, 3 different quarterbacks, the first 2 seasons. So, I mean, what kind of offense are you going to run with the 3rd string quarterback out there? Then this year you finally have a healthy Baron Morton for the first 7 games of the season. And now this is some of the products. It's just been up and down. Obviously, you've had to deal with the Taj injury. You're not able to continue to stack success because it's still all over the place. You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. You can't – one day you're throwing 79 screens. The next game you throw 1 screen and you're successful. One day you abandon the run. One day you're just all about the run and you're successful. It's just a mixed bag. It's never consistent on as far as his play calling goes. Yes, there are some design plays that I think you could do to get a guy like a Micah Hudson out there, just like the pass in Arizona where he was out there that he caught it at the 2 or 3 yard line on that design play that they had for him. I think there's ways to get this kid out there. Not saying that I'm vying for him to take all these other guys, the Josh Kelly, Coy Eakin, Caleb Douglas spot. I just think, you have the talent there to kind of boost what you're trying to do with this offense. But I don't think he should get, as much as I dislike some of his play calling, I don't think this is on him at all, to be completely honest.
Jeramey?
This is the one game where I will say it was not Zach Kittley's fault. You got points every quarter. My criticism of Kittley this game would be that you had 6 drives in the first half, basically, and 4 of them you didn't get any points on. 2 of them, I mean, you started off with 2 punts, back-to-back drives, and it wasn't a 3 and out, but like it was like it felt kind of uninspired. You let Baylor get a little steam, get a little momentum there early, and they kind of capitalized. They got that first touchdown. Whatever. For me, it wasn't really Kitley. I mean, there are better offensive coordinators out there for sure. But I was reminded today that we are finally shuffling out of the Wells recruiting era, finally getting like Wells guys pretty much at the end of their tenure and be like, all right, thank you, bye, and getting new guys in. That's no excuse for play calling by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that Kitley played a decent game here. You got points every quarter. My standard for an offensive coordinator is pretty low because my standard for defensive coordinators are pretty high, which is ironic for a Texas Tech guy. But I think if you're going to get points every quarter, that puts you at 28 points, which is pretty nice if you hold, the opponent to less than that. And that's, we've done good enough. And that, again, conference-wise, you've held on average outside of the Cincinnati game, right? The average has been about 28 points, which was pretty great because we would get wins from that. And even in the win against Cincinnati, it was much closer. It was many more points were scored, but you found a way to win that one. So the failure in this game for me wasn't Kitley. It wasn't great and inspiring. And yeah, I wish you would have gotten, 60 points so we could have won. But I'm not going to put all that pressure on Kitley because by the time that we really got our offense humming, we were down, 17 points or whatever. It's just like now we have to like pretty much throw Taj out the window because we can't. He's great, but he's not going to be busting off 80-yard runs, every drive. So it was tough. It was tough on Kitley this game.
Yeah, to Jeramey's point, only 3 teams in the Big 12 average over 28 points a game. Oklahoma State and West Virginia both average 28.7 on the dot. And then, of course, Texas Tech, which leads the conference with 36. So, yeah, I mean, if you consistently have at least a touchdown a quarter, you're going to win most games, right? I'll say this. So this year, I listen, and I think some people are starting to think of me on Twitter as like a Kitley apologist. The first year, I was very much on the anti-Kitley train, right? I thought it reminded me of when Cliff Kingsbury was learning how to be a head coach. It felt like that Kitley is learning how to be an offensive coordinator, and I hate it. I actually think his play calling this year has actually been decent. I think the things that we like to complain about, are things that almost every spread offensive coordinator does, right? It's the same things we complained about with Neil Brown and his screens when he was here at Tech. It's the same thing we complained about with Cliff Kingsbury and the way he did some of his running, when he decided to run and stuff like that. Like it's the same thing that we have complained. It's the same thing that the freaking Arizona Cardinals complained about with Cliff Kingsbury when he was there, right? Like this is spread. Same thing that we complained about Lincoln Riley, like spread air raid type OCs do these draw plays on a 3rd and 25. They do these, screens in these scenarios. Like that's so that aspect of it. That's the type of coaching and the type of system we have. But I actually think that his play calling hasn't been as bad this year. Actually, I've had a lot less problems with his play calling. I think one of the issues that I have sometimes with his play calling, and sometimes I question whether it's Kitley or by design of how McGuire thinks. As a good example is the first drive. So first drive of the game, we have a 3rd and 2, and Taj runs the ball, right? Now, most of the time on a 3rd and 2, you're trying to get the first down. So you might do a short pass, you might do something quick, something I guarantee you play that first down, especially when you're at near midfield. But he gets a running play and he loses a yard. He really lost 2 yards. And part of me was thinking in my head, I was like, they're probably going to go for a run play here with the idea of even if he doesn't get it, we're going to go for it. And what ended up happening is he lost yardage and then you got to punt it. There was another play later on where on a 3rd and 13, the very next drive, Morton just tries to hit a 10-yard hitch right in front of the first down with the thought of we could go for this, right? And that happens frequently. Like frequently, I'm seeing Morton throw a pass or a play call or a screen to get close to the first down so they can go for it on fourth. So again, is that a bad decision on Kittley, or that's just the mindset that we're going to go for it on fourth? So we got to give ourselves a manageable fourth down, because we saw it in year one so many times where we have our third down percentage in 2022 was near the worst in the country because we always went for it on fourth down where it was near the top of the country with that mindset. So again, that's where I'm looking at. Is that bad play calling, or is that just a system in place to say, let's get close on fourth down so we can just get it, go and go for it? But then when you lose yardage, or you have an incomplete, or you have something that happens, well, now you got to punt, So I think that's where I haven't had too much of a problem with the play calling because of in that thought. But then there's another aspect of Kittley that I do think is valid offensively, is that if O-line struggles to block and tight ends like Mason Tharp, as my headphone comes out, shout out to United, like guys like Mason Tharp struggle this year, and Cam Dickey has struggled at times this year, and everything that doesn't have to do is just running north and south, right? Like as all these things happen, and basically the only person on offense that is not struggling are Todd Brooks, Caleb Douglas, and Josh Kelly. Players not being ready to play or not playing up to how they should, does that fall on Kittley too? Right? I'm so glean on, hey, Cam Dickey missed a play, or Dre McCray ran the wrong way and a play that happened a couple weeks ago or stuff like that. But like how much of that, when multiple players are struggling, and that's where I'm going to talk about DeRuiter here in a little bit, but when multiple players on offense are struggling and are not ready to play, or when Barron is not ready to play, does that also fall on Kittley? Because we're focusing on the play calling aspect of it. That's not all a coordinator does. You know what I mean? So like that's I think the piece where I'm more starting, and it's recent where I started to say, as much as I'm growing the players for how they're not executing, if they're continually not executing, that is a coaching thing. Jeramey, I saw you came off mute there.
I don't think Zach Kittley is the guy to motivate anybody, right? And just that's just a character read on like his personality. Seems like kind of the gentle stepdad. Like, I'm gonna try to crack a joke every now and then just to earn, your favor, but this is how we do things, if that's okay. He doesn't seem like a kind of guy who's going to raise his voice emphatically and energetically, a la Joey McGuire. So I don't know, like, what his role, if it's very managerial style of like, I'm going to tell you guys what to do, but I trust you and your athleticism and your commitment to this program. Like, that's how it's got to be. Like, it's very hands-off business. That would not surprise me because I feel that, Joey's such an energetic character already that I think Kittley trying to challenge that in his own way, or even be supplementary to that, just isn't him.
Which not all coordinators need to be like that, right? Like you have a lot of coordinators that aren't rah-rah in your face and they are the managerial types, but that's when you need a position coach of where you say, hey, this is what I want. This is the game plan for Saturday, right? These are the plays I plan on. This is how we're going to attack them. And now I need us to impart that on our team. And that's where the position coaches come in. But you are still, as Kittley, you're still ahead of your offensive position group. You're still the one game planning. You're still the one, even if you're not rah-rah in their face, it's still your responsibility to make sure that the coaches and the players are ready to play on Saturday, right? And mind you, I'm not saying this as like an emphatic piece on Kittley. It's really that's where I'm starting to question him now, because I don't like the play calling aspect is one that I actually do think he's really improved on, especially from like, I know we're all happy about year one.
Oh.
Year one was bad play calling. You know what I mean, Joe? What are your thoughts there on that aspect?
I think that, it's just like a scapegoat to an extent. I just don't think that all of it could be on Kittley. I mean, Kittley's not, the game plan aside and handling Barron and all that stuff. But I mean, all these pre-snap penalties as well. Like, I mean, that's not on Kittley at all. I mean, how are you going to blame any of that? Now you're having to game plan being behind the sticks and putting yourself in these positions to have to adjust your play calling due to our undisciplined, tendencies. So it's just, it's just very, very tough for him to be put in that position. I get it. He's taken a lot of heat over the last couple of years, rightfully so in some cases. But then this one, just to your point, I mean, it's been moderate. It's been fair. His play calling hasn't necessarily cost us games, like in a West Virginia last year, whenever we choose to stop running the football in the red zone. You know, things like that have not happened this year. You know, he's put us in these positions. There's the pre-snap penalties. There's the Barnes decision making, you know, trying to fit in these tight windows. And he has been playing some turnover-free football for the last couple of games up until, you know, Saturday night when he threw that ill-advised interception into double coverage there on the sideline. But that's also these guys putting so much pressure on themselves that thinking that one play is going to change the entire game. And it's so hard to get these guys out of this mindset that says, oh crap, we're down, you know, 2 scores. Let's make a play and just change this entire game. And it's very tough to watch because they go out there and try to do too much. And we say it on the Reuter's part. We've said it on Kitley's part. Hey, you're doing too much. Just try to simplify everything and make the game come to you, not necessarily put yourself in the game at that point in time. So it's just, as far as, you know, Kitley goes, like I said, I don't think he's getting a fair share this year. There's a bunch of other, you know, what are those deals called? Different things that are happening, you know, just those decided, like I said, the pre-snap penalties, the Barnes decision making. There's just all these different things that are going into how he has to manage how the offense is being called.
So I do got to make a correction from something I said before because I was on the wrong tab. Actually, there's only 3 teams in the conference that average less than 28 points in a game. But there's only 3 teams in the conference that give up more than 28 points in a game. And that is the Texas Tech Red Raiders, number 1 at 36 points, right? So Tech, we do still lead the conference with 38 points a game, but we give up 36 points a game. So here's the thing, right? And Jeramey, you are Tim DeRuyter's biggest fan. But eventually the stats cannot be wrong, right? Eventually we look at it and say, okay, well, Texas Tech defensively, we give up the second most yards in the conference. We give up the most points in the conference. We give up the most passing yards in the conference. And our strength, which is our run defense, is still 5th worst in the conference. So when is it, you know, and I know a lot of times we try to handicap it. We compare it to past Tech defenses. We compare it to some games where the offense puts them in terrible situations, like Washington State, for example, where they give up 36 points. But yeah, you give 36 points, but the defense actually played well considering how they were put in bad situations on games. So I get all of that, right? But on a game, like as we look through the Texas Tech schedule this year, and we look at some of the games where the defense was atrocious, like Abilene Christian, the defense was bad. Cincinnati, the defense was bad. Now Baylor, the defense is bad. That's 3 of the 7 games that we played here where the defense wasn't just bad. They were embarrassingly bad. Like they were atrociously bad, right? And so that is where, when does, after a couple of years where we've given DeRuyter a bit of a pass, this game here, I look at it and say nobody defensively, and our linebackers are good. I get that. But even the linebackers in this game didn't play well. Nobody came to play. That Bryson Washington play that I talked about earlier in the pod where he went off, that was the entire game. Just piss poor effort. You know, they were not prepared. They were not ready. They looked like they were running in mud. Like it was, I made a joke about like, I want to know what party they went to the night before. Because that's what they all looked hungover. From the first quarter, this is after a bye week. Nobody really prepared for this game. And so, you know, it is about, you know, a part of me does feel like Kitley's getting all this blame here because, like Joe was saying, we like to pick out a scapegoat. And he's been our scapegoat since day one of, or Kitley. But, hey, Tim DeRuyter, bring your butt here because what the hell was that?
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I think Tech fans especially are kind of getting this this like mixture of nostalgia versus new age, and just believing that Texas Tech should be scoring, 60 points a game. Why aren't we scoring 60 points a game? Because we're so used to giving up so many points a game that the Stockholm syndrome here is like, oh yeah, no, we'll give up a lot of points, but we'll score more in the end. And that's kind of been the Texas Tech mantra to certainly mask bad defense. But we're fighting against this again new age where DeRuyter has brought in a lot more veteranship to the defensive coordinator position, a lot of stability that we haven't had. He's stuck around. He's invested in these guys. He's shown a willingness to change up his discipline to match the talent on the field. And that certainly showed. I mean, we're talking about games that we played abysmal. We've also had games that we played really well against good teams. And so you're getting like brief glimpses of it. But I do agree that there is kind of this inconsistency. And again, here's the trifecta for me about this game. Number one, you're coming off a bye week. Number two, you're fully healthy. Number three, Baylor is butt cheeks. So like you had the trifecta here, and you gave up 60 points pretty much at home on homecoming. That's bad. That's just bad. And everybody deserves a little bit of that blame. But for me in this game, I was mostly upset with Tim DeRuyter and those two weird special teams things. But I was mostly upset with Tim DeRuyter because we talked about it. 3-man rush. What the hell is that? Even though our defensive line is pretty depleted and has gotten a lot more depleted in the past day, three rush is not going to do it. And when we have done 3 rushes that have worked, it's because we had like stunt blitzes coming from linebackers. We had some kind of support cast off the edge and through the gap. It didn't matter. We had some kind of pressure. I will say that we called it up once, and Sawyer Robertson was inches away from being tackled, and he just got the ball off to Washington. And I was like, well, F.
He did the thing. It seemed like to me like the game plan was keep him in the pocket, right? Keep him in the pocket. We don't want him to improvise, which is, the scouting was on him was when he improvised when he's at his most dangerous. I mean, the commentators talked about it a few times that when he was at Mississippi State, Mike Leach, before he passed away, would tell him like, hey, you're at your best when you're just going out there and playing football. And so it seemed like then you kind of saw that on that play you talked about where he dumped it off to Washington, where because it was like, okay, I'm about to be sacked here. Oh, I see you, Aaron Rodgers play, right? And so it does. So I get that you want to avoid that, but let me tell you something. Any quarterback worth anything, if you give him 5, 6, 7 seconds back in the pocket, he's gonna find an open receiver. And that's what we were doing.
Why aren't you playing man? Like, why we put in this zone bull crap when he's got all the time in the world? And I do agree that Robinson, and I said in the last pod, I'm sticking to my guns here in the scouting report, the Jeramey scouting report, that Robinson has been, I mean, he's given up a lot of, he's made a lot of poor decisions under pressure this season, which is why the record has been so bad, especially when it gets like game is on the line. He's shown some poor decision making. We had no scouting on that because if we did, we would have been trying a little bit more to put some kind of pressure on him. Here's the thing. If he's just walking scot-free and, you're down 31-21 and he's doing fine, why don't we change it up? Because you're down 10. That's not unmanageable. Why don't we change it up? And we did not. And that's what frustrated me is that there was no effort to change up the defensive scheme.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you how I know how bad the defense was. After we went forward on fourth from our own 25 and didn't get it, where we waved the white flag and said, okay, game's over. It's 42-21. They scored 2 touchdowns after the game was already over. Daquan Finn, remember we talked about him in the preview pod? The guy that lost his job because of how bad he was, came in and scored a real nice touchdown. So you can't even stop them in garbage time. When they are not even trying to score anymore, you can't even stop them. They stopped passing. That last drive, they stopped passing. They were like, hey, Finn, just go out there, stay healthy. We're going to try to keep Sawyer. And he was like, hey, say less. Let me run off for 34 yards real quick. So, that's everything from that is an issue. Joe, what are your thoughts there with DeRuyter?
Yeah, it's real tough, right? Because, Kidley gets a pass the last couple of years because of the quarterback situation, right? So now you have all these big guns on the defensive side for DeRuyter going down, Adedire, Amir Washington to a point, Isaac Smith last year, Duda Banks this game, all these injuries are stacking up on the defensive side, and having to manage everything that's going on. And, it does seem like we're pressing a little too much. And it does seem like, when we have something, we ultimately just fall back and think, okay, we've been getting enough pressure with our 3-man front and some of these stunts and blitzes. Let's go ahead and pull back and try and keep Sawyer Robertson in the pocket in this particular game and instance. And it just didn't work out. So why didn't we just go back and try something new just for a series, just to see what we could do out there and why he chose not to do so on in this particular night itself. It's just left me dumbfounded there in the stands. I mean, I'm watching, I was like, there's 3 down linemen, and I don't know how big Baylor's offensive linemen are, like, by measurables, but from where I was sitting, they were towering over all of our defensive linemen, and they were making us look silly on multiple plays. Some of their running backs weren't getting touched until 5 or 6 yards down the field. That Cameron wide receiver guy was bodying up any cornerback that we threw out his way. That guy looked like Rob Gronkowski, just a little bit darker. It was just one of those deals. I mean, he was just handling all of the people that we threw out there. But why did we not schematically change whenever the game was still kind of, in that little gray area that we could still, potentially make a push to tie this thing up or to, win this game? And he just, that white flag was just waved a little bit too soon in my eyes.
So I'll ask y'all guys this question. So we talked about Caitlin, we talked about DeRuyter, talked about this coaching staff, not really coaching the guys, talked about the players. Yet there's one person that I feel like everybody is hesitant to blame. And maybe they're starting to, because I know, Jeramey, you kind of shared that this person's friend decided to give, make sure that everybody knew that it's not really his fault. But
or his burner.
Yeah, through his burner.
Jury's still out.
But Joey McGuire has gotten off scot-free. Like, I've never seen a scenario where a fan base says, man, we can't stand the OC, and now this DC is not working well. The coaching staff is screwing this up. The players are screwing this up. But now that head coach, he's still good. He's still all right. Hey, we don't want to. He's so likable. Ooh, we feel good about him. When does Joey McGuire get held accountable? Right? Because I'm watching this game and I'm like, everybody, all 3 phases, nobody was ready to play after a bye week at home against a rival. Jeramey, you jokingly said it was a trap game early on. Like, this is actually the exact opposite of a trap game. Your visibility should have been like eyes bright, playing a rival on homecoming after a bye week at home. Like, if you're not up for this game, then you'll never be up. So I'm like, especially when there's nothing to look forward to. You're playing TCU next week. They stink. So, like, there's nothing there. Everything should have been here. And to lay an egg in this scenario, I literally thought that Tech was going to win this game because this is not a game you could possibly overlook. Right? Like, that's how I kind of came in. I said it was going to be close just because that's how we are. But this isn't a game you could possibly overlook. So the fact that we still were not ready to play, there's only one person that in the long list of things that we gave, we talked about of reasons why we lost. There's the head of the snake that nobody wants to really talk about, which is, when do we hold Joey McGuire accountable for the Washington State game, for the NC State game a couple years ago, for the BYU game last year, for the Baylor game now? There's now, in the year 3, we've seen games where we just don't look like we should even be there. We talked about it in his thing with road games and how he's not been good. But from like the first quarter, you're like, man, this team does not look – they look overmatched. They look like they're not ready to play. Like, they look like they're just not even in the same stratosphere as the team they're playing. And whether or not that's true or not has been changed. But now, for the second time this year, there's a game where the team just looks overmatched and they were not prepared to play at all. When does that get on the front on the feet of the head coach, Jeramey?
Man, your guess is as good as mine. And here's the issue: is that he's scot-free because he is surrounded by so much money that I think there is a massive just effort from the top down to like protect Joey at all costs because Joey's carrying about a $250 million tab of expectation of like, hey, we've invested this much, therefore our investment's going to turn around and be a good thing. Because the burner that I was actually talking about, Cody Campbell had tweeted something like, hey, we're closer than we've ever been, blah, blah, blah. And I just quote tweeted it after X amount of tacos, how it gets. And I was like, what the F does this even mean?
Yeah.
Because this is just talking out of your ass. Like, oh, we're as close as we ever been. Are you going to elaborate on that? Like, are you going to help us see how close we're getting? Because what we saw was getting mollywopped by an in-state rival on homecoming at home on the bye week, off a bye week. That doesn't feel close at all, buddy. And so I caught the flack of a random baseless, like weird avatar Twitter guy who was like, don't you know how much money this man has donated? Don't you think he wants it more than you? I'm like, here's the thing. I could give an absolute shit if all the billionaires stopped watching sports because it was never about you. It was always about the fans who are just like, will scrape together money to show up and support a team that represents their hometown. I could give a rip if all of you billionaires just go sit in the sand and build your damn sandcastles. It's not about you. It's never been about you. And we, the fans who have to sit out in the hot sun while you drink your little South End Zone Chiltons in the AC, we're the ones who are upset. We're the ones who are upset because it costs me money out of my meager paycheck. Student athletes get paid more than I do, by the way, and they have 0 degrees and 5 brain cells between them all. So the fact that I scrape together money to go to these games, I have every right to be upset that we got embarrassed at home. Good Lord. That we got embarrassed at home when I had guests from out of town. And I was like, come watch my excellent football team. You know what? Never mind. Let's go get tacos because that's going to solve everything for me right now. It's like cry into this taqueria plate. There needs to be more accountability. I don't care how much money there is. There should be even more accountability, but there's not. And that's a really good question, Albert. I just don't know. I don't know when Joey gets the flack for it.
Joe, I don't know if you can add to that. I don't know. That was great.
I just for context, I don't have nothing else to add to that.
That was great. So, all right. So one last thing I want to do before we talk about this game is that as much as the sky is falling, as terrible as that game is, and I know nobody wants to hear it right now, Tech's 5-2. We're a game away from a bowl game. Joey McGuire, as of right now, has the best. I know I just condemned him. I get that. But he currently has the best 3-year stretch of any Texas Tech head coach in his first 3 years here, like ever. Put Mike Leach up there, put Spike Dykes up there. Joey McGuire, as he is going into 2.5 years in, has the best starting point out of any head coach in Texas Tech history. Now, on one hand, that's really a damnation of Texas Tech's history. But on the other hand, I think that's where Cody Campbell says, guys, this ain't the Matt Wells time. This ain't the Cliff Kingsbury time. This ain't the Tommy Tuberville time. We are trending in a direction that is positive because the stats say so, right? Like because the success that we are garnering does say so. And so, yeah, it's disappointing, but if we come back, you beat TCU next week, you're 6-2. And no matter how it looks, the stats say you're 6-2. The stats say you're going to a bowl game for the 3rd time in a row, and that'd be the first time since 07 to 09, right? And so you're like, yeah, we are. And I think the issue there is, and there's one person who's kind of trolling me on Twitter the other day was mentioning how, we just want a good team. That's all we want. We just all want a good team. And I get that. I truly do get that. We just want 08 again. We just want 08 again and again and again, and we haven't even gotten close to 08. Right? We haven't had a 9-win season. 08 was an 11-win season. We haven't had a 9-win season since 09. And so that's all we want. But to Cody Campbell's point, yes, we've had the Baylor games and the Washington State games and the BYU games and the Wyoming games and the Abilene Christian games, even though it was a win. The team, from a 30,000 foot view, it is trending how it's supposed to go. We are still 3-1 in conference. I mean, Joe, am I wrong for saying, like, looking at the Baylor game, yes, it was awful. It was terrible. It was abysmal. And yes, Joey should get the blame, number one, for that game. But 3 seasons in, and this season at 5-2, it is what it is with a young roster, a young injured roster.
Yeah. 5-2. You're looking at it, right? Big picture, 30,000 feet in the air looking down. If we told you that if we didn't even have we didn't have stats, we didn't know, this was just our record. We didn't know how these games played, but we were 5-2 up until this point. That's something I believe 95% of Texas Tech fans would live with right now.
So it's what I predicted at the beginning of the season. I said we'd be 5-2 at this point. And
despite how bad it's looked at times, a lot of times more so than we'd probably like, we're still 5-2, 3-1 in conference play, with a very, very good chance of going 4-1 on Saturday. It's just, how do you want to look at it, right? We could be 6-0, we could be 1-5. It's just, we're 5-2 right now. Every game that we've had, with the exception to the North Texas game, has been a dogfight, or an ass whooping. Washington State, against a Tortillas Tech team, did what they had to do, and Baylor just, kicked our ass in the butt bowl. It is what it is. But if those are the 2 games that you've only lost this game, despite how up and down you've played, you could live with it, right? 5-2 is 5-2. You're still ahead of the curve, and you're still ahead of where a lot of people gave you credit for. We were picked 9th or 10th in the league, and where we're sitting still right now, 4 games into conference play, we're still in the upper half of the Big 12 conference. So, I mean, you live with it. Yeah, you live with it. So, if you're looking at it from the big picture view, from, non-biased up above, you could deal with where we're at right now.
A wise man once said, "You are what your record is," Jeramey.
Yeah, you walk it back a little bit and say that Joe's 10-2 prediction we're still in the running, baby. We're still in the running.
Now, flip side though, Jeramey, is my 7-5 prediction is also very much alive.
That it is, buddy. That it is.
Yeah.
And your 3-3 ponderance from last episode is haunting me ever a little bit, slightly more. And this Saturday, it may become a little bit debilitating. But I think that ultimately, yes, there are. Joe's right. You can look at it this way or that way, right? You can look at it and say this has been a great 3-year stretch for Texas Tech because of the gentle improvements along the way. Like, we are 5-2, and it's like you're 1 win away from bowl eligibility, and that's really exciting. I saw a tweet today that there's a very exclusive list of prestigious D1 universities that include West Virginia, Texas Tech, and I can't remember the third school, because you don't want to remember the third school, of schools that have not been ranked in the AP top 25 since before 2019. And I was like, wow, I had not thought about that. we just can't crack it. And stuff like that is also kind of a dagger where you're like, damn, I wish we could just like get in there, and so we could just disappear into the milieu. Like, okay, everybody, we're part of the big group, I think. And I start to wonder if a lot of this, like, it's almost like this fan justice of, I want a huge slingshot year for Texas Tech where they can't help but talk about us because we are undefeated, because we're whipping ass, because we're doing this, we're doing that. And when it feels like that might be kind of turning the corner, because like on game day Saturday is the most I've ever heard them talk about Texas Tech. Wasn't very much at all, but it was the most I've ever heard them talk about Texas Tech. It was like, oh, we're right there. And then we lay an egg, and it's like, oh, jeez. All right.
Prove them right.
Back to square one. Prove them right. We're back, And so it's like both sides of the coin. It's like, hey, we are making really good improvements. I think there is a really clear vision for the for the football team, and there's a really cool season that can be had here if we take this on the chin, lock it in, and like finish strong. Right? You can do a lot of really good. You go into Ames, Iowa, and you beat them. Thank God for that afternoon kickoff. You go into Ames, Iowa, and you shock the world. You beat them. That's nuts. Like that would be unheard of, right? And it's possible. It's possible. Is it probable? No, but it's possible. It is, because I didn't think it was possible we'd lose to Baylor, and we did. So, Albert, anything is possible in this weird season.
So speaking of the weird season, real quick before we get out of here, a couple tidbits from the rest of the Big 12. Great game, Oklahoma State at BYU on Friday Night Football. BYU escapes beating Oklahoma State. That's another team that's 0-4 in the Big 12, but like I don't know if they're actually bad or they just have the worst luck in the world. Garrett Rangel is just as bad as Alan Bowman was. I'm pretty sure Alan Bowman is back to being their quarterback again, so that's fun. UCF loses a stunner. Rocco Becht, really good quarterback. It keeps Iowa State undefeated as they barely squeak away at home. Find it funny that both Iowa State and BYU stayed undefeated with wins 38-35 against teams that are 3-4. That's just funny.
Real quick on Rocco Becht, does he not remind you of Max Duggan from a couple years ago?
A little bit, which is annoying.
Right.
A little bit. And it's actually odd that he's not getting any Heisman conversations because Iowa State's undefeated top 10 right now. Like it's should be getting some type of notice, and maybe a couple more wins he will. But yeah, K-State smacked West Virginia in West Virginia, right? So any talks of West Virginia being decent kind of go away. But also K-State, they're back. They're back a little bit. I know some people, they took that loss on the chin. Everybody was questioning them, but they'll be right there as well. Cincinnati. Arizona State got all this. Everybody, they were, close to being ranked and big win over Utah and this, that, and the other. And Cincinnati kind of put them back in their place. Kenny Dillingham desperately wanting a new kicker because that kicker stunk. But big win for the Bearcats. Kansas beat the hell out of Houston. I don't care that Houston beat TCU. Houston's still the worst team in the conference. They are bad. They're really bad. And Kansas, we're just a better team. Speaking of better teams, listen, Colorado, shout out to y'all. Walked into Arizona and smacked Arizona around. Shadur Sanders looked great. That game in Lubbock is looking tougher and tougher as they're 5-2. Also one win away from a bowl. And who would have thought from 2 years ago that Colorado would be going to a bowl? It's amazing. And then TCU, another win at Utah. And it looks like, man, I will tell you something. If college football had an MVP, I feel like quarterback, name just escaped me. Cam Rising. No, quarterback Cam Rising would be in the conversation just because that team went from a college football playoff contender to it awful with his injury. And so they look really bad, losing to TCU. So TCU is now 6.5-point favorite over Tech next weekend. Not to tell you my thoughts on that game, but I would tell you to take Tech with the points. I'd tell you to take Tech money line. But with that, Joe, anything else you want to say to the people?
Let's just put this one to bed. I'm tired of talking about it, tired of hearing about it. Let's just get to work and go out there and do what we're supposed to do. Despite, everything that happened, good, bad, or the other, let's just go out there and get to work.
Get out there and get to work. Jeramey, what say you?
You know who's really working this season? Women's soccer. This is a team that has not lost since August. August 25th is the last time that the women's soccer team felt the sting of loss. They have not lost since. And they are going to win the freaking Big 12. They play BYU this Friday. Going to be a stunner. Going to win the Big 12. And there's going to be a really fun push, depending on the draw, because there's some really good teams out there. Depending on the draw, there's going to be a really good push in the tournament. Now, another team, if you thought I would never enjoy softball, think again. Go ahead and buy your World Series tickets because Texas Tech buddy
God.
is going to the World Series this season.
Okay.
And it's on the back of one person and one person only.
Okay.
Anyways, this is a real thing though. As Nigeria Canada's like debut in her first 2 games against Odessa College, she pitched 7 innings. She got 18 strikeouts, retired all 26 batters that she faced. She was 4 for 6 at the plate, 2 doubles, 3 RBIs. We won that first game like 11-0, and then the second game like 8-1. So there was complete domination for a softball team that hasn't really felt complete domination in some time. Super cool. She's worth the price of admission. So if you have an opportunity to go see a Texas Tech softball game this season, definitely do. She is transforming this team, and you could talk plenty about this softball team because Coach G put together a complete squad. There's some really good athletes on this team, but this year's Texas Tech softball team will probably be something to watch out for.
Listen, if one player could put a team all the way to a World Series, the Angels would have won 3 straight. Right, that team was abysmal. But then Nigeria Canada is incredible. Let me tell you something. She's the GOAT. This team makes the Women's College World Series. She's the GOAT in that aspect. So who knows? Maybe we're watching Michael Jordan in her prime. I will say, to Jeramey's point, soccer is they're incredible. The job that's been done over there is great. And Jeramey, you said this game is for the Big 12 title. So winner of this game wins the title.
BYU is not. I think it's TCU. I don't remember how the Big 12
TCU. So I just pulled it up. TCU and Tech are both tied for first with an 8-02 record.
If we get this win, but I think we hold a tiebreaker. Or no, we tied them.
No, probably just share the title. Probably just share the title. Share the title with them.
Whatever. We'll have a piece of that pie. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
get the win.
Sure. Get the dub for sure. I definitely missed my ad read, so make sure to go to charlieelsa.com. Use our promo code 101215 TEN1215 charlieelsa.com. I will say, the only thing I'll say here is that game sucked. Absolutely no excuse for it. Joey has to get the team ready to play on Saturdays. Really no excuse for it. These guys have to be ready to play real football games on Saturdays. But all that being said, we are, to Cody Campbell's point, I know it don't feel like it, I know it don't sound like it, but we are at a better place now than we were 3 years ago. So there is some bit of silver lining in that aspect. So game at TCU, I do think that this game at TCU will mean a little bit more. It'll mean that either we get on the right track or, my God, it's going to be tough to get that 6th win. So we'll see what that is, and you'll be able to hear that TCU preview later this week, so be on the lookout for that. So for the Red Raider expert, that is Joe Lopez, and the People's Champ, Jeramey Gillen, this is your boy, Albie Shore, and you've been listening to the Tortillas Takes podcast. As always, stay wrecked, people.